Hello, everyone. My name is Yating Yu Tiffany from Hong Kong Polytechnic University. This is the topic of my presentation, resisting foreign hostility in China's English language news media during the COVID-19 crisis. And so we all know the crisis started in 2019, and then on March 11, 2020, it was classified as a pandemic by the WHO. And with the increasing global death toll, it has brought enormous impact on social order, created fears among people, and heightened diplomatic tensions within and between different nations. Although the WHO warned against naming the pandemic after a specific country, region, or race to avoid stigmatization, some countries, leaders, and also media outlets still explicitly associated COVID-19 with China or Wuhan and blame China for the spread of the pandemic. So in response to the accusation against China made by other countries during COVID-19, the Chinese English language news media, which is part of the official mouthpiece of the Chinese government, formulated a discourse of resistance. That is, the state-owned media attempted to oppose an ideology or a concept, system, policy, structure that they feel violates their rights and freedom and is inimical to their well-being and welfare. So in the existing studies, some scholars in the field of crisis communication have suggested that a critical approach can be used to investigate the influence of social-political factors and ideologies on public relations. And PR, in short, little attention, however, has been paid to the discursive construction of resistance as part of responses to global health crisis. So this study will analyze the construction of resistance in China's English language news media during the COVID-19 crisis and its ideological implication. And here is a table that sums up my data. And I collected the data from 4 news media controlled by the Chinese government. And my methodology, I use Fairclough's dialectical relational approach situated within CDA. And according to Fairclough, a discourse contains 3 basic elements: text, discursive practice, and social, cultural, or political practice. And so following this practice of CDA, this analysis involves 3-stage procedures: identification, interpretation, and explanation. And here is the key finding. I found that 3 discursive strategies are dominant. And these strategies were linguistic realized through mechanisms such as argumentation, topoi, nominations, predications, and metaphors, and have ideological implications for nationalism and humanitarianism. And here are my key findings. So the first strategy is anonymification. In the portrayal of certain things or people as enemies on the basis of the danger and threat that they pose, they use the strategy of anonymification. And so China's news media use this strategy to emphasize that a real enemy was COVID-19 rather than China, and their countries should work together to fight this enemy rather than resort to scapegoating or blaming China. So this discursive positioning was amplified by the use of labels such as enemy and foe to compare the virus to a military force, which had a personifying effects and performed the function of nomination. And here below is an example. As you can see, I highlighted enemy in red, which is a symbol of this strategy. And the second strategy is victimization. It refers to the use of language to foreground the plight of victims so as to involve empathy. So China's media emphasized that the city of Wuhan and the Chinese people more broadly were victims of the pandemic and hence should not be blamed for it and required to pay compensation to other countries. This discursive positioning was amplified by the use of the term victim, which realized the function of nomination. And terms such as torture were used to amplify the misery that Wuhan and China as victim has suffered in the pandemic. And here is an example. As you can see, tortured and victims, the highlighted words are symbols of this strategy. And then the last discursive strategy is heroization. And it was used to depict certain groups of people as heroic. And the strategy amplified China's heroic topic in managing to contain COVID-19 and assisting other countries in combating the pandemic on humanitarian grounds, which thereby delegitimized hostility towards China or charges brought against China. And the media reported no new cases domestically for the first time on March 18, which symbolizes face victory by China in the battle against COVID-19. And as you can see in the example. And so through this discursive practice, the media was part of the Chinese government's communication bridge to the world. In the face of the hostility and charges against China made by other countries, the English language news media cast China in a positive light to highlight its national solidarity and heroic sacrifice in successfully defeating the pandemic and to delegitimize any unjust aggression towards China and people of Chinese descent. Despite the growing diplomatic tensions, China's media also foreground humanitarianism, which was inextricably intertwined with the government's vision of building a community of common destiny. as the rationale behind China's assistance behind China's assistance to countries across the globe to provide empathy, build solidarity, and promote international cooperation in the face of a global health crisis. And in addition to the discursive practice, Chinese nationalism play a crucial role in the construction of resistance. Under Xi Jinping's leadership, nationalism was incorporated into Chinese dream and the vision of building a community of common destiny to increase China's soft power globally, form strategic alliances, and resist utilitarianism and protectionism. To prevent history from repeating itself, the government has promoted nationalism to unite the Chinese people in the face of external hostility. This was the rationale for the discourse of resistance constructed by China's news media, which amplified the danger and threat posed by aggressor in a bid to unite people of Chinese descent across the globe to condemn racial discrimination and defend China's interests during COVID-19. And limitation. My study has only investigated the English language news media. Future studies can consider examining presidential speeches in response to COVID-19 at international conferences. And here are some selected references. And here are some relevant publications. My presentation today derived from my first paper, Resisting Foreign Hostility in China's English language news media during COVID-19 crisis, published in Asian Study Review. And here is my contact, and I welcome your questions, comment, and suggestion. Thank you very much for listening.